G'day, Dave here. At home, self-isolating, Bonny Hills. Beautiful day outside. The sun's shining. The beach is just so crystal clear today. It's a wonderful place to be locked down. I've been for my early walk on the beach, and I see people out in the surf even now. To be honest, I actually feel a little bit guilty being in such a beautiful place, because as I look at the TV and as I've talked to some other people, there are some who are just really finding it hard. Imagine being in some of the slums in major cities in the third world. Imagine being in a major hospital that's not even had enough beds or ventilators. Imagine being locked down in a place like a cruise ship where you don't know whether you're going to be the next one to pick up the virus or not. And the reality is, in these times, there's quite a bit of injustice, isn't there? I feel a bit guilty. I don't know why I'm doing so well. Maybe you too are feeling that. It's easy to look at the news and almost get a sense of like you're watching a Netflix series or something that's going on somewhere else, because life is pretty comfortable where I am. And this problem of injustice is actually a problem which has troubled people for a long, long time. And it troubles people in relation to God as well. And I could introduce you to friends who have just really struggled to take the Christian message seriously, because they can't understand how a good God would allow the injustice that takes place. Or if he allows the injustice, then why doesn't he actually bring judgment upon the unjust? And that, friends, is a question that's troubled people for centuries. You can go back and even in the Bible read various psalms saying, "How long, O Lord? When are you going to bring the evildoer to account? When are you going to actually judge people for the evil that they've done?" You go back now over millennia and you think about even what's happened in the last 100 years or so, and people like Adolf Hitler and Joseph Stalin and Idi Amin and Mugabe, and people who actually destroyed the lives of millions and millions of people. Are they going to be brought to account, or have they got away with it? Well, this is a question that I think has troubled Bible readers. It's troubled Christians, and it's troubled people who are exploring the notion as to whether there's a God and whether God can be trusted. Of course, if you're an atheist, it doesn't matter. You've got no answer, and you certainly can't blame God if you're an atheist because you don't believe in God. But if you're trying to come to grips with God, what do you make of this injustice? Well, we're looking at Ecclesiastes in the Old Testament, and I'd like you to pick it up with me at chapter 3 from verse 16. He says, "And I saw something else under the sun." Remember this phrase, under the sun, it's observation. This is what he can see going on in the world around him. "I saw something else. In the place of judgment, wickedness was there. In the place of justice, wickedness was there." That is, he's identifying this same problem that people seem to be getting away with doing evil. And then he says to himself, because he's a man of faith, remember, he does know God, and he's applying his mind to the circumstances of life, but he's not lost track of what he knows to be true about God from his word. And he says to himself, verse 17, "God will bring into judgment both the righteous and the wicked, for there will be a time for every activity, a time to judge every deed." God will bring things to account. God will judge everyone for the way that they've lived, the things that they've thought, the things they've said, the things that they've done. It's a devastating thought, isn't it, really? Because if it's going to be every thought, every word, every deed, then that will mean us. What will God do for us? How will we fare when God brings our world to judgment? But hang on a step. Before we kind of explore that, how do we know that there's actually going to be a day of judgment? What if this is just kind of wishful thinking? Because we see injustice in this world and we just kind of hope it's going to be put right one day. Well, I want to take you to the New Testament and the book of Acts, the Acts of the Apostles. It's the account really of the first followers of Jesus. And in Acts chapter 17, Paul the Apostle has been talking about the different gods that the people in Athens seem to be worshipping, or at least statues and things that they've made that point to gods. And he has this to say, and I'll pick it up at Acts 17 from verse 29. Therefore, he said, since we are God's offspring, we shouldn't think that the divine being is like gold or silver or stone, an image made by human design and skill. How could it be that something we make could have made us? It just doesn't make sense. And he says, verse 30, in the past God overlooked such ignorance, but now he commands all people to repent. For he has set a day when he will judge the world with justice by the man that he has appointed. And he's given proof of this to everyone by raising him from the dead. Just recently we've celebrated Easter. 2 profound days, not just in the Christian calendar, but if we understand what's going on, and if the Christian explanation is true, then profound days that will shape eternity. We have on Good Friday, Jesus, God come amongst us and dying in our place to take the payment for the injustices that we have done, to pay the price for our evil, so that rather than God judging us, he takes the judgment himself in Jesus. But that's not the end of the story, because there is still to be a day of judgment. And for those who've put their trust in Jesus, that's not a day to fear. Because on that day, God will look at the ledger and go, oh, Jesus has paid for that. You've trusted in Jesus, it's all done. In you come. But for those who ignore Jesus, and for those who have done evil, and deep down we know that to be all of us, for those who've pushed God out of our lives, who've decided that we don't need God, and that's a massive problem. For those of us who push God to the side, that will be a day of reckoning, a day when we give an account. And God says this, there is a day that's been set when God will judge the world with justice by the man that he has appointed. And he has given proof of this to everyone by raising him from the dead. You see, Easter Sunday is more than a miraculous event 2,000 years ago. It's actually proof from God that everything we do matters, that nobody will get away ultimately with the evil that they have done, that nothing is going to be eternally swept under the carpet, so to speak, but there will be a day, and we will face that day when we die or when Jesus returns. We will stand before God and give an account, and God will bring everything to judgment. And God has given proof of that by raising Jesus from the dead. I want to encourage you, please, explore this message about Jesus Christ crucified, Jesus Christ raised from the dead. For the Bible tells us if Jesus has been raised from the dead and he's alive now, then we ought to put our trust in him. Because one day, everything, everyone, everywhere will be judged by him.